This week on the Star Trek Universe podcast, the Picard series will be extremely different from Discovery. More short treks are on the way. Whatever happened to that Khan miniseries? Discovery is getting an extra episode, and we're going to talk about the hopes and possibilities for the Kelvin timeline, all coming up right after this.
Welcome to the Star Trek Universe podcast. My name is Matthew Carroll.
I am David C. Robertson.
Lay that news on us, David C. Robertson.
There's a lot.
News boy.
News boy?
Yeah.
I'm all man, lady.
You're a newsie.
No, we're not doing that. No Christian Bale over here.
Extra. Dave's got some news for you.
I think this is the first time I've actually wanted to quit the podcast.
Sell me that pape, man. Sell me that pape.
Oh, good Lord. The Star Trek Picard series is going to premiere next year.
Next year? As in 2019?
As in 2019.
Wow, that's so soon.
On the 4th, at the UBS Annual Global Media and Communications Conference, CBS's new Chief Creative Officer, David Nimitz, talked about, he was talking about All Access and the upcoming Star Trek projects, but specifically he said that Discovery Season 2 is in a great place, and that there's huge anticipation for Picard, the new series, that will premiere at the end of the year, in 2019.
Truth.
He also says he was talking about the space between Discovery Season 2 and the new Picard series, and he says we're doing these Star Trek short films in between. So he's confirming more short treks as well. Nice.
Short treks in between this season of Discovery and the season of Picard.
Yes.
So last year, and forgive me for not remembering, did they do a mid-season finale for Discovery?
Yes, they cut the season into two parts.
Are they doing that this time?
I'm not sure.
It seems like if they're going to be in 2019 and they're going to do season 2 and then take a break, do some movies, and then do a Picard series will premiere, it seems like they don't have that much time to do 2 half seasons. It almost seems like they're going to have to run straight through.
Yeah, they might only have time for that,
which would be awesome.
That's fine with me.
Love the idea of getting to the point where I've heard, I don't know if it was on our podcast or another podcast. I don't know. I don't know if it was a podcast I was listening to or taking part in. But someone was talking about that they're planning to try to make 4 series that just run all year, and they just are constantly running with and this may have been just speculation. I don't know.
I may have told you this outside of the podcast.
I can't remember. Maybe. Yeah, that's the other option. It was either a podcast I was listening to, a podcast I was on, or just a conversation that we had that runs very similar to the podcast.
Right.
Anyway, so is there some truth to that?
I think that I read somewhere that the goal was to basically have very short breaks in between, to almost be able to run year round.
Which if you include Lower Decks, which I almost don't, not because it's not Star Trek or I'm not going to enjoy it. I'm excited about it, but it's just going to scratch such a different itch. I have a feeling. Mm-hmm. But nonetheless, it is in the prime timeline, and we'll still scratch the itch to some degree. But if you
I'll be the judge of whether it's in the prime timeline. Thank you very much.
No, you won't. We'll have constant arguments about it, and it will never be resolved.
That shit is subjective, sir.
Some days you'll be saying it's out, some days I'll be saying it's out, and we'll constantly disagree with why it is or is not. And you know this, and it's fine. It's how this thing works.
I just said I'll be the one who decides that. I don't need a producer telling me this is prime. I'm like, the evidence doesn't support you in that, man. Doesn't support that at all. Right.
Right. Yes, I hate when they say something's not in the Prime and they just disregard everything, which is kind of what they've done with Discovery. But it frustrates me because it just feels like they're saying it's in Prime just so I'll watch it, and then not actually making it in the universe I like. It's the same sort of exploitation of like the fandom that I don't like. It's like, yeah, you're that type of fan that cares about canon? Well, just for you, we put this in the Prime canon. I mean, we're not going to let it affect the way we make the show at all, but it's in the Prime canon.
Oh, look,
that's frustrating to me.
Some months ago, John Eaves, who's been a longtime designer on Star Trek, publicly stated on Facebook that they were legally bound to make the aesthetics of the show 25% different, specifically the Enterprise.
Right.
And then he deleted that tweet, and after a bunch of sites reported on that, he deleted it because CBS came out and said, that's not true. We have every right to do whatever we want. It was an artistic choice, which doesn't make it better. Like, I would be more willing to accept a legal issue with Paramount or something.
So would I, which is why I don't really understand why they'd... Unless there's also a legal reason they're not allowed to say that. Like, it has to be legally dissimilar and you're not allowed to tell people like that. But that's... Who writes that contract? Like...
Yeah, so I don't know exactly what's going on with that.
Yeah.
I've tried to look into it, but a lot of that has come back with what I feel was conjecture and somewhat wild interpretation by a wild interpretation of the Paramount and Viacom contracts, and I'm not seeing. It's one of those aggravating things where people will like put stuff out on the internet and say like, this is real, and then I'm like, where are your sources? Like, what are the articles you're linking to? And they don't have those, so I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that.
I also don't know.
Yeah, I'll tell you right up front, I don't know. So anyway, Alex Kurtzman says that the Picard series will be, quote, extremely different from Discovery.
Interesting.
He says, it's an extremely different rhythm than Discovery. Discovery is a bullet. Picard is a very contemplative show. It will find a balance between the speed of Discovery and the nature of what Next Gen was, but I believe it will have its own rhythm. He also says that it's more grounded. He says more grounded is not the right way to put it, because Season 2 of Discovery is also grounded. It will feel more real world? Yeah, that sounds like grounded, buddy.
Yeah, it sounds like you're just not wanting to insult Discovery.
Yep.
It's like, oh, it's based in, I don't mean grounded. I don't mean real world. I don't mean it's like scientific, I mean, I don't mean that. I don't mean scientific. I mean
unless what he's really trying to say is the new Picard show is going to be like Picard being sad with Irumodic syndrome in the vineyards. I
really hope not. I really hope not. I love the idea of a Picard series, but I really don't need like a slow contemplative Picard series. Like, and that's not what they've said here. They've said that it's trying to find a happy medium between the pacing of Discovery and the pacing of Next Generation, so it's not too much of a leap from Next Generation. But the thing is, I don't mind if they leap in style. Like, I feel like they think we mind the style of Discovery, or the fact that Discovery is fun and has rhythm to it. Like, sure, some people do. Some Uber nerds do. And sorry, Uber nerds, I said it. But I'm an Uber nerd in other ways, but like the fact that the thing is fun doesn't bother me. The fact that it has no substance, or that it's fun for like you put me in an action sequence with no character or stakes, then I just don't care. Yeah. And like you can give me Picard with like a heavily action oriented show where he's like running around fighting in Section 31 or fighting the Borg or leading the charge against some new enemy or like whatever. You could give me that action Picard show and I'd be very happy as long as it's about something. It's about something with his character. It's about something, some real problem that the characters are facing and that they're trying to find a solution to,
I don't know. I feel a little encouraged by this. I feel like I want a more contemplative Picard, and I feel like in the last few, since generations, and especially First Contact really set Picard up as he stopped being Jean-Luc Picard and started being Jean-Luc McClane.
Right.
He even had the wife beater running around hey, look, I'm impressed by your glistening 60-year-old muscles too.
I don't think he ever wore a wife beater.
He absolutely did in First Contact. He absolutely did.
No, he wore a gray tight shirt.
It was not.
It had sleeves.
It was a tank top.
Sleeves. The line must be drawn here.
No, when he's swinging from that tube in engineering in First Contact, that shit was a tank top, sir. That was an undershirt.
I don't recall this undershirt.
Absolutely, I memorized his arm muscles.
Well, the man's attractive. No one's saying otherwise. I'm trying to find it on.
So am I.
All right, I'm just gonna pause the podcast because we're gonna find out the truth of this matter.
All right, that's what we need to do.
He is wearing a sleeveless shirt.
It is a tank top.
It is a tank top. I don't know that I'd call it a wife beater, which, by the way, what an offensive term you used, Dave.
Well, if men who beat their wives didn't wear that kind of shirt, I wouldn't have to say that.
But I would not say it's a traditional shirt known as a wife beater, but it is a sleeveless shirt. The gray color and a very different consistency than the traditional wife beater. But yes, it is a sleeveless shirt. It does not have sleeves. I drew the line in the wrong place. Right.
And I sent you another picture. I don't know if you can see it better in that one, where his muscles are all glistening as he breaks the Borg Queen's neck. That is 24th century wife beater.
Did you draw those arrows?
I did not draw the arrows. That was from an article. I don't know what that was about.
Yeah, those arrows are pointing out my point. It looks more. That shirt has a lot more structure to it than the traditional wife beater.
Oh, come on.
But no, I hear. I definitely take your point. It is a sleeveless shirt.
The name of the article is Star Trek DS9/Voyager T-shirts and tank top analysis.
I love you, Uber nerds. Star Trek nerds are the best nerds. We just have the best ones. And why is he in Terminator in this scene?
Yeah, and there, the article is showing basically B'Elanna, Janeway, and B'Elanna and Janeway wearing basically the same kind of thing. But yeah,
interesting.
Anyway.
I had forgotten his sleeveless shirt at the end of the movie, but that is definitely a sleeveless shirt. I agree with you on your point. Back to the point of this whole discussion. Yes, I was wrong. Yes, I don't want to talk about it anymore. Back to the point we were all making. Yes, I agree with you that I don't really care for him as an action star, and that's not really what I was getting at in saying that we can have him do some action. I just think that that's not most fans' problem with these shows, and the Kelvin timeline. It's not a problem with the Kelvin timeline. It's we don't need Star Trek to be. We don't need it to be flashy just for flashy's sake. As long as you make it substantive, it can also be flashy. But the problem is often they give up substance to add in flash, and it's just not what we want.
And what I don't understand is I like the flashiness. I'm okay with that. If you look at the original series, look at the colors in that show. They made it like that because they were hey, this is going to be on color TV, and let's make it flashy. So you will have bright colors. You will have Kirk and crew members fighting alien bad guys, but it also has great substance. Like, I'm not saying it's got to be, as that Onion video said, a bunch of people sitting around a boardroom all day.
Right.
That's one of the big downfalls, I feel, of the Berman era, was that it just became like gray colors of people sitting around in boardrooms.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing we got to remember is, like, watching the original series now, it feels a little slow, and it feels a little like a boring show. You would probably disagree with me.
It's just slower paced.
It's very much slower paced than modern television. And so I think what a lot of people that are, our age who weren't alive for its first run, they watched it when they were a kid, and it has a very different pacing than the shows we were watching, like, currently. Mm-hmm. And so it feels like a slower type of show, but even then, a lot of people considered it a kid's show because it was like an action, like, swashbuckling sort of story about traveling through the stars on a wagon wheel, like, whatever. Like, that's the kind of story that it was, and fighting alien races, like you said. And I think now we look at it in the past, but it's always had the fun element, and it's not just about people in boardrooms staring at each other.
Yeah, but then again, I'm like, I like how un-PC that the original series can be. I like what Spock referred to in Unification as the cowboy diplomacy aspect of the show. I love the cheesecake beefcake aspect of the show. I love that Kirk is always, like, somehow gets his shirt ripped off. Like, it feels like that happens a lot.
Yeah. Oh, man, I was reminded a lot of that sort of spirit today. I was listening to the Cracked podcast that came out this week. So if you're listening to this, you can look up the Cracked podcast after you finish this, of course. Yeah. And their current podcast is about astronauts and cosmonauts that we should know about.
Uh-huh.
And it's just all these insane astronauts and cosmonauts who went up back when space travel, and I mean, it's still in its early phases, but like when it was basically just a tin can with some crazy propulsion that were like human beings were flying. Like, it's just crazy, some of the stuff they did. There was like a story about a guy who like solved 2 major life-threatening problems while he was in space. Mm-hmm. With a hammer. Like, they were using like this machine wouldn't work, and he just like, I know what I'll do. He just hit it with a hammer, and it like unlocked whatever was the problem, and he fixed it. And his like slogan later in life was like, never go to space without a hammer, because he solved like multiple life-threatening problems with his hammer.
That's great.
And there's another guy who like landed a spacecraft. It was supposed to be computer controlled, the landing was, but the computer went out, and there were no controls in the cockpit, so he had to rip out paneling and get to some wires and like create his own interface by tugging on wires and hoses.
And he did it with a hammer.
I think this was a different guy than the hammer guy.
Yeah, I know.
Then there was the whole cosmonaut thing was like, they seemed less ingenious is not the word I'm looking for, but they had less ingenuity about their stuff. But a lot of just like crazy survival skills. A lot of the cosmonauts would land in Siberia because they always landed way off course. And they'd have to like they'd come home from space and they'd have to like live in the tundra of Siberia fighting wolves for weeks while people tried to find them. So they like came down from space. They had to design a special gun. It was like a one-handed sawed-off shotgun they designed just for astronauts because it like weighed less, I guess. I don't know. So they could fight off wolves when they came home.
That's great.
It's a great Cracked podcast.
Why does he have a sawed-off shotgun? To fight the wolves. In space? No, in Siberia.
Because we can't land in Russia. We haven't figured it out.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Really, really fun podcast this week.
It makes me kind of really sad that I'm not going to go and listen to that.
Right, yeah, I've told you the best ones.
Yeah, so I guess, our listeners don't have to go and listen to that.
Well,
no.
It's still a wonderful podcast. I highly recommend it.
Okay. This one's quick. The Picard series is going to film in California. They're getting a bunch of tax incentives. Like, it's going to be good for them.
Yeah. Always.
Everything else films in Toronto, so that's actually a stronger indication that we're probably not going to get any kind of crossover between Discovery and Picard. And I'm excited because it means that more than likely they're not going to be reusing sets. You know how like Star Trek in the old days, and by old days I mean when we were young, would be like, oh well, here's the Voyager bridge, and here we're just going to mess it around a little bit, and now it's whatever, the Defiant, or actually I think the Defiant was the Enterprise E, but that's neither here nor there. They reuse sets. They did the same thing on Star Trek, the old movies and stuff.
Sure.
It just makes me happy because it means that the Picard series is going to have, its own sets.
Yeah. And famously, of course, they used the, I think it was the DS9 uniforms for Star Trek. Was it First Contact?
No, it was Generations.
It's Generations.
You can literally see Geordi trying to like wear Chief O'Brien's uniform and like being way too big on him.
Yeah, it's really funny. All the uniforms in that movie are way too big because they couldn't have. Well, how can they not afford a few extra uniforms? Like, that's insane to me. To make a big budget movie and not put.
Well, they designed new uniforms, and that's why the action figures for Generations look different from the TNG uniforms and the DS9 uniforms. And I don't remember exactly. We'll probably get into it when we do a Generations review at some point, but I can't remember exactly why they didn't go through with those new costumes. Maybe it would just cost too much, and they were just like, you know what, we have new costumes on DS9.
Right,
so.
But it's not so much that you can't, like, design. I can see why designing a whole new line of uniforms could be expensive.
I mean, look, we're talking about a movie that literally reused VFX shots from Star Trek VI, the previous movie. They had the same Klingon bird blow up.
Yeah.
I don't normally really want to talk about stuff, just actors talking shit, but Michael Dorn believes now is the perfect time for a Worf spinoff.
I bet he does.
Not all of those other times over the years that he said this would be the perfect time. He was talking to Inverse, and he said, this is, I think, perfectly timed and placed. You're not stepping on anybody's toes, and I always thought the Klingon Empire was a great empire to write about because it's Shakespearean. The Klingon Empire has had to evolve and change, and they don't like that, and they're fighting it every step of the way. They've had to introduce aliens into their society, just like our world now is becoming a global world where it's not just like, oh, we're Californians, and that's all that really matters. We're talking about something here, and it affects China. What? So sadly, Michael Dorn has become senile. And no, I
think his point is well taken. I mean, it's exactly what they're doing with Discovery. I wonder if he's watched Discovery and realizes, they're doing the thing that I'm saying right now.
Yeah, it was weird the way you put it. But anyway, he goes on and says, I guess this is his premise for the show. Worf is on a ship and he's going out, and all the adventures are happening with him. Well, no kidding, you're the star of the show. That's what you want. He says, every episode is like the original or Next Generation. It's a self-contained episode that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it says something. I have no interest in that. Nope,
that doesn't sound good.
I don't want it to be on a Klingon vessel. I don't care about other people joining the Klingon Empire.
I do think the idea of a Star Trek series centered on a crew that is not Starfleet would be super interesting.
I don't. I like the inclusivity of Starfleet and the Federation, and I like looking at it from that perspective. But I think if you travel too far outside of, the human condition on Star Trek, it just doesn't work for me. Like, I don't want to just see like, oh, here is this alien species who are acting this way because they can't be different. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, to me, that's why you have Worf there. And not that he's human, but he's raised by humans and has a lot of experience with humans. So, like,
but
I
he
can
acts
see,
just like a Klingon.
Yes. Well, we don't know how he acts 30 years later. You know, if he's continued to live among humans and has maybe his relationship with Dax and his pain over the loss and all that stuff has like taught him kind of a more open-hearted view of himself and of humanity, and maybe he's a different man. And then maybe he's our way into a show like that. That could be interesting. I'm not saying it's the show, but the thing, if they're going to make 5 or 10 Star Trek series, like, I don't mind them trying something weird, you know?
Yeah, if I would be open to watching it, like, obviously I would watch it, but the whole, like, every episode is a self-contained thing, that just sounds boring to me.
Yeah, no, that sounds like he's trying to say, hey, classic Star Trek fans, don't you want a show that stars Worf and is just like the shows you watched 30 years ago? Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, we've all moved on. We all like serialized storytelling better now. I mean, like, there's always a mixture lever with that, where you can mix in a little bit of self-contained storytelling in your serialized storytelling, but like, good TV now is serialized. It's just the truth.
Yeah. And he also said he would join the Picard series on one condition. He says, I'm only interested if it's something really interesting. If the character was a major part of the franchise or whatever the show is, he's not just going to show up, beat somebody up, and then go home. And I think that's fair. I mean, why do the thing he did in the last, like, 3 movies?
Well, I think that it's fair that he doesn't show up and just beat somebody up. Yeah, that would be a disservice to the character. But it is not fair to say I'll only show up if I'm a major part of the franchise. Like, just calm down, Michael Dorn. Like, we'd love to see you back. It's the same attitude that we were talking about, I think, on a previous episode. Was that tonight, or was that a previous one? When we're talking about William Shatner being like, I'll come back for a lot of money. Like, just calm down. You're valuable. We want you back. But, like, not that much.
What's funny is, like, I did look that up after we recorded, and I couldn't find that quote again, but I did find a later quote that was really recent where he said if it was interesting and they could figure out a way to work in a captain of his age into it, he would come back, absolutely. Like, Shatner goes back and forth.
Right. You know? I'm sure he does. I'm sure it depends on how his mood and his pills and such.
His pills. Michael Dorn, though, here is just being ridiculous, I feel like. Because it was just like 2 months ago that he and Marina Sirtis were talking about, we were not invited. They didn't say it was the Next Generation was coming back. It was a Picard series.
Right. Well, I think that's probably true.
Yeah. But, like, now it's like, I would only come back if it was really interesting and if my character was a major part. No one's asking for you to come back.
And I could see there being
some fans, I'm sure, are. Some fans want this to happen. I'm absolutely
sure. Yeah, I
would love to see them.
Some fans want the entire Next Generation crew back and just do the whole show again. And, yeah, that could be fun, but it wouldn't make sense, really. Like, the idea of all of them still being on the same ship, still being under the same crew, it didn't even make sense in the original series. They just kept doing it, and like it was always considered a crazy thing that they kept doing.
Well,
they kept having to steal ships and shit.
Well, that was the thing in the original series movies. They weren't on all this on the same. Like, Spock went home to Vulcan, tried to master the Kolinar discipline.
Right, Sulu became
Chekhov,
a captain of his own ship.
Yeah, like Kirk became an admiral, went to Starfleet headquarters for a few years. Chekhov was on the Grissom. Sulu became captain of the Excelsior.
Right, which is one of the genius things about 2, 3, and 4 happening all one after the other, the way they do. Mm-hmm. Because it's really hard to do all the work of putting your crew together every time.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what they did with Next Generation. They kept, it's time for a movie. Hey, Worf, come home from Deep Space Nine. It's like, oh, gosh. I guess who's going to get married this time?
Yeah. Now Worf showing up on those last few movies was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was.
My favorite, okay, not on Nemesis because he was there for Riker and Troy's wedding. That makes sense,
Right.
But Insurrection, where Picard walks in and Worf is there, he's like, "Mr. Worf, what the hell are you doing here?" just hang that lantern, buddy.
Yeah. I mean, that is a funny way to handle it for sure. Does he explain? I can't recall.
He does have a little an explanation of some sort, yeah.
Right. But it doesn't really make sense.
No, it doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Worf,
of all the ships that you could find.
Was Worf in First Contact?
He was, yeah.
I'm
the Defiant.
I remember they had a new security officer, though, right?
They did, but they gave Worf his station back really quickly.
Oh, that's right, because they're fighting the Borg at the beginning, and he's on the Defiant. That's it.
He's on the Defiant.
That's right. I remember now.
Yeah, tough little ship you got there. Little.
Yeah. That's right. Been a lot of years. Yeah. It's weird to say. I know it shouldn't be weird because it's literally been 20 years since that movie came out? Something like that?
It was 96.
96. So, yeah.
December of 96.
18 years. No. I'm sorry. 22 years. Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels weird because that movie still, to me, that still feels like new Star Trek to me. Because it's not that many movies or series ago. It's still sort of fresh in my mind.
In some ways it feels like that, and in other ways it feels like so long ago.
I mean, it obviously was so long ago. What other news you got, my friend?
All right, so last time we talked about this Nicholas Meyer Khan miniseries that has basically just stopped being discussed, and I did look into that, and about a month ago, it was reported that over the summer, TrekMovie.com was talking to Nicholas Meyer, and he explained a little bit what was going on. He says, "I was commissioned to write a 3-hour or 3-night event, and that's what I did. It's called Ceti Alpha V, and I don't know the current status." Now, in case anyone out there doesn't know who Nicholas Meyer is, or if you don't, I don't know. He was the director of Star Trek 2 and 6. He was pretty much responsible. He and Harv Bennett were responsible for reinvigorating the franchise. They were responsible for, I feel, the best movies in the franchise. They really leaned into the naval aspect of the military and naval aspect of Starfleet. Anyway, he says, it's been up in the air. Partially, there was a lot of confusion between CBS, and there were big upheavals at CBS, and while they sort of didn't know who was in charge, they also didn't know what they were going to do with Ceti Alpha V. I'm not exactly sure what's happened. I haven't heard from them in some time. He says it's very good. It's a terrific trilogy. I think one of the things that happened, though, is that they're not sure that a trilogy is long enough to warrant the cost of doing it. Maybe it should be something longer, or I don't know the details of their thinking, because I haven't heard them. But CBS did trademark the title Star Trek Ceti Alpha V, and they also trademarked Star Trek Lower Decks the last few months, as well as Star Trek Destiny, Star Trek Reliant, and Star Trek Starfleet Academy. So, and also, Nicholas Meyer was working on Discovery in the first year. He says that he was involved for the first year. He said he worked on it. He said, I wrote things on it, and then I was not invited for the second year. I don't know why. Which I don't know why either, because it's Nicholas frickin' Meyer.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. He's written some of the best Trek, but he wrote some of the best Trek for a different generation. So I think whatever he does, I don't know what he's done recently. I'd be curious. Mm-hmm. Then that is an easy Google away.
Yeah, he's done a lot of critically acclaimed stuff, but for the purposes of this opinion, he's maybe he's definitely one of the greatest Star Trek writers that has ever existed.
Sure. It looks like in the last few years he's done mostly some TV shows, which, not to say there's anything wrong with that. Looks like he had a long period of not working for 10 years or so, and then Not too much for about 10 years. But then he recently has done Crossing Lines, Time After Time, Medici, Masters of Florence.
Yeah, I saw in that same interview that he's been more interested in doing TV lately. But, he's one of those guys that he had a film career and then you just stopped hearing from him. I don't know exactly why that was. I'm
always interested with guys like that. Especially with Star Trek, because like I said, I think he's written some of the best Star Trek as well. But then you gotta stack it up against what's out there now, and can he do what's being done now? Can he break the type of story, the type of serialized storytelling that's kind of expected in today's drama television?
I don't know, man.
I don't either, and I haven't seen any of these shows that he's been in, so who knows? Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah. So next up, we've got Anson Mount, the guy that's playing the new Captain Pike on Discovery Season 2, has said that the new season is going to be 14 episodes. He was he was just at the Star Trek Original Series set tour in Ticonderoga, New York, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I will tap on his headstone. Those freaking TOS sets are gorgeous. I so badly want to see them in action for real again. Like, they had pictures online of him like sitting in the captain's chair on the Enterprise, even though that's not his set. That's not the Pike set for the Enterprise. Oh my gosh, like, that's one of those things. It's like you go back and you look at like the Phase 2 fan shows or Star Trek Continues. Mm-hmm. I'm not a huge fan of the acting on those shows necessarily, but those sets look gorgeous.
They lovingly recreate the sets.
They do, and I make it a period piece, man. It's not like it's going to get that much more from anyway. So anyway, he was he was talking to Trek Core, and he said they've pushed it to 14 episodes now, and basically what happened, they had a 13-episode order. Showrunners Gretchen Berg and Aaron Harberts were let go for, among other things, leadership and operational issues, including budget and time overruns. They had problems on Season 1 as well, but they were running super behind, maybe even about an episode or more behind, as Jonathan Frakes wound up directing the 9th episode instead of the 10th, like he was planned. But because of all that, they wound up having to extend their time at Pinewood Studios, so adding one more episode would allow them to amortize the cost of production over more episodes,
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's probably how we got Magic to make the Sanus man go mad or whatever. So, because that feels like a very, let's slip this one in here episode.
Right. Like, this doesn't, as long as everybody's back to kind of homeostasis at the end of one of these episodes, we can throw anything this anywhere.
Maybe that's what happened. Maybe that wasn't the episode. I don't know. I know that they had budgetary problems, and that's why they did that episode, pretty much. So the writers of The Brightest Star and I don't know, that other Saru episode that was from Season 1. I can't remember the name of.
The forest one?
Yeah, Into the Forest I Go, or whatever it was.
Boom,
yeah.
We got there.
Something like that. I don't know.
Dang, I thought we got there.
We may have. I don't know.
I don't know why that made me laugh so much. I was so hopeful.
Yep. So, Bo Yun Kim says, "We know you have more questions, but trust us, they will not go unanswered." The Star Trek writers on Twitter said that your questions will be answered in time. Doug Jones at NYCC, New York Comic Con, said that the Brightest Star had breadcrumbs that you'll find in Season 2, noting that there was a direct tie-in with hints between that full Season 2 episode and the Short Treks mini episode. So, we were talking just a few days ago about how we want more. We want to know what the hell's going on.
Yeah, well, who are the Baul?
Yeah, and Doug Jones, I didn't list it in the notes, but Doug Jones also, before the Short Trek came out, referred to their predator species and how the Kelpians are extremely long-lived, so that's why there's the balance. So I'm pretty sure the Baul are just like the predator species on that planet.
Right. No, I agree completely, but they definitely have technology to apparently beam the Kelpians away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or something to that effect, and communicate with some sort of. They're a much higher technological race than. Mm-hmm. I mean, and they have technology that can reach out to Starfleet apparently. So they have communications that can get out. We don't know if they're warp capable or not.
We don't. Yeah.
Now that would be an interesting episode if the Baul achieved warp travel. And it was time for the Starfleet to go introduce themselves.
Right. Yeah.
And then, like, you have the, the onboard Kelpian being like, I don't think we should talk to these guys. Yeah, my ganglier tingling.
My ganglia senses tingling. So anyway, that's it for the quote unquote prime news. I'll say television news. How's that?
Right.
Because
however you feel about it.
Yeah, I don't. It depends on how the listeners feel about it. I don't know. If you guys don't want to hear any Kelvinverse news, thanks for listening.
I think Kelvinverse news is good news to talk about. Let's do it.
All right. I mean, you and I aren't as favorable as some people are about the Kelvinverse.
Sure.
It's a divisive universe.
Yeah. It is. As is everything in Star Trek.
It is. You're right.
It's as divisive as, like, any other Star Trek thing.
Right. Yeah. Shut up, man. But no, people are a little more angry about it, I feel. But, I guess those same people are mad about Discovery. I don't know, man.
Well, it's the first time they've made Star Trek that was, like, specifically not in the prime timeline. What I liked about it was that it did intentionally start its own thing and not just ignore the fact that it was a different timeline. They, like, went ahead and just said it.
I will say this, though. The only series I was not around for was the original series, pretty much. And the animated series. But I remember adults saying Next Generation isn't real Star Trek. I remember them saying it'll never last.
And look, it didn't.
Yeah. People shitting all over DS9. Unfairly, I might add. People hated on Voyager for 7 years. People hated on Enterprise for 4 years. There are still people in the forums who are like, I still haven't watched an episode of Enterprise because they screwed up the canon with the Ferengi.
There are actually people who say that season 3 of original series went off the rails. Like, that's a thing.
Well, it did.
Right? Like, that's my
point. A little
bit. So, but that's my point. Is like, if you're a purist enough, you can get rid of all of Star Trek. So you kind of just have to take it in. And that's what we're here to do. Take it in. And we'll call stuff shit when we think it's shit. But, like, we're here to try to take it in and enjoy it.
Well,
for what it is.
Season 3 of the original series is when Roddenberry left, and they started off with, like, Spock's brain and shit. And you're like, what is happening?
Right.
Not saying there aren't great episodes in Season 3. There totally are.
Didn't they up the series order or something like that in Season 3? I've heard that. I don't know if that's true.
I don't remember them upping the series order. Like, it was canceled at some point. I can't remember. I think it was...
I can't remember.
I think it was canceled after Season 2, and they brought it back, and then they did another letter writing campaign, and it didn't stick. I think that's how that went. It's been a while since I read up on that. Damn it! I wish 13-year-old Dave was here. He knew all of that. He had names.
Too bad. Only the downgraded version is here.
Yeah.
So let's hear about this last bit of news. No, I was totally wrong. Yeah, the first season had 29 episodes, which is insane. Second season had 26, and the third season only had 24. Now that's not to say the order couldn't have been higher, but it doesn't look like they upped the order in subsequent seasons. It looks like it went down.
Yeah, I didn't think they had more for season 3 because they were really cutting cutting the budget at that point. Like, that was the point where, like, they at 6 p.m., whether they were done with scenes or not, they, like, executives would literally walk onto the set and, like, start pulling plugs out of walls.
So interesting to me, isn't it always 100 that a lot of shows shoot for to get into syndication? Isn't that the number they always say, that you need 100 to get into syndication?
But that wasn't a thing back then.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
There was, like, Star Trek flourished in syndication.
Yes, I realized that. That's why I was curious.
That fourth network that just ran reruns. Before that, that's why so many contracts back then didn't have any sort of, like, compensation for reruns. I think, like, the cast of Gilligan's Island only had, residuals for, like, 5 episodes, because things just didn't run like that. They didn't rerun,
Yeah, which is so sad.
Ad nauseum. Yeah. Anyway, Kelvinverse universe, or Kelvinverse news, whatever we're talking here. God, that was awful. John Cho. I usually don't mention this stuff, but I'll kind of go into it a little bit here. He was asked, he says, "I sadly don't have any news for you. I wish I had more for you here, or more for you there. I don't know what the ins and outs at the studio are, but I am optimistic there will be another Star Trek 4, because I'm optimistic about what Star Trek says and its place in our culture, blah, blah, blah." So, Chris Pine, in September, said, "I don't know. I would love to be involved, and we will see what happens. I'll await the phone call. Until then, I look forward to it." So, basically, is Paramount just being a dick and not wanting to pay him what he's worth?
Right. And there's obviously a flip side of that, or he could be holding out for more money than the series can afford at this point. And and this could all just be negotiating tactics on both their sides. Like, who's gonna blink first and say yes, I'll do it for that amount, or whatever, or yes, I'll pay that amount.
Now, as far as we know, though, S.J. Clarkson is still the director. And what's interesting about John Cho is, like, I really think that, like, they could do they could do these movies without, and probably make about the same without Chris Pine. I think
that's probably true.
I'd be fine with seeing Captain Sulu's show. I'm all about it. Let's do it.
I am too. I would be all over a Captain Sulu show.
That's not to say I don't want Chris Pine and Chris Hemsworth. I really like that idea. I really wanted to see whatever they were cooking up with, I guess maybe time travel or alternate universe, where Chris Hemsworth comes back and plays George Kirk again. I would love to see that.
Me too. The fact that they had him as George Kirk so many years ago, and then he became such a huge star as Thor, I just think that's super fun. Like, going back now and watching that scene, it feels totally different, because you know that guy, Hey, it's that guy. It's Thor. Yeah.
I feel
love
like
that.
I feel like Chris Hemsworth's money is probably right, whatever he's asking for.
Right.
I mean, he's freaking Thor.
Yeah.
Chris Pine, I feel like, might be leaning too heavily into the I was in Wonder Woman and I'm in the sequel camp.
Yeah. I don't think that's going to get you much cachet yet.
I mean, it got close to $1 billion.
Right, but I don't think anyone's blaming Chris Pine for that. Rightfully or wrongfully so, I just don't think many people are saying, "Oh, that's Chris Pine's fault."
Yeah, I think the truth of the matter is Chris Pine might be asking for too much for what those movies have made. Like, it probably isn't worth it for Paramount. But
right, Wonder Woman made a lot more money, so you can get that money out of people. You can't get blood from a stone. Like, and I'm not saying Star Trek's a stone. It's not the worst franchise, but it's just not. It's not seeing the numbers it used to see, and they just need to do something to bring new people in, which is what I've been saying for a long time, and they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot for a long time now.
Well, also they've just got to not spend as much money. Like, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I know, like, I've never understood the fans who complained that, this movie just felt like a long episode of the show. And those same fans will turn around and go, like, well, Star Trek should stay on TV. That's where it belongs. Why are you complaining about long episodes of the show then?
Right. Like, I don't know. I hear you.
But
I think you tend to conflate the fans, though. Like, yeah, there's people who say both those things, but it's because lots of fans have lots of thoughts. And sure, maybe some people have completely conflicting thoughts, but I think a lot of times it's just different people saying different things.
But I've got literal names of people in my head.
Right. I'm sure there's people out there arguing against themselves forever.
Anyway, I think they need to cut down on the budget for these movies. Stop trying to make it Marvel or whatever the hell they're trying to make it. Don't make it Star Wars. It's Star Trek. Spend $20 million.
Yeah.
That's like 5 times the amount of money they should be spending on an episode.
Yeah, I'm not real up on how much episodes cost, but I know like episodes of like a lot of the Marvel stuff we do cost about $1 million each.
Well,
that we cover over on Marvel.
But the Netflix shows specifically cost $4 to $5 million.
Interesting.
I'm guessing they need maybe an extra $1 million, maybe on Star Trek, on a show like Star Trek. I'm not sure.
Possible.
I'm not sure. I was just kind of going for $5 million. And
right. You can do things so much cheaper these days, and I know everybody wants to get paid, and to get the premium people is the hard thing. As is being fought over with the Chris's right now. To get the premium people, you have to pay them the premium prices. But I honestly don't think Chris Pine. What else is he? Obviously he was second banana in Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman being first banana.
He was the first banana.
No,
I am pretty sure she didn't have a banana.
I'm not talking
I think
about
that was the point.
Them having bananas, Dave. They are the bananas. It's an allegory. You sicko. No, he played second fiddle to Wonder Woman, which I think was a great role. It was fun. He was a fun part of that movie. But like other than that, which again, second position in a movie, like I would not know Chris Pine's name, were it not for Star Trek. And I only know his name because I'm a big Star Trek fan. Like, I just don't think he has the cachet that he maybe thinks he has. I mean, like, I get you're Captain Kirk.
Either.
But, like, if you weren't Captain Kirk, what else do you have?
I mean, he was in a Jack Ryan reboot that didn't set anything on fire.
He was on a runaway train with Denzel, I believe.
Yeah, he's done some voices for Robot Chicken. He did a version of Spider-Man in Into the Spider-Verse. Ooh. He was in, Wet Hot American Summer, First Day of Camp. He was in Into the Woods.
I feel like
Horrible Bosses 2, and he was great in Horrible Bosses 2. Like based on his character Rex Hansen, I would say he should play the Joker at some point.
He's been in a bunch of these things where it seems like he is sort of this like almost cameo performance where he's like playing this funny performance, which is partially funny because he's Chris Pine. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like, that's only funny if you're a big star. Like, if you're the big star that is the leading man that is Chris Pine. Like, I feel like he's like playing on his leading manness, but the only real leading man role that I remember him really from is
Star Trek and Wonder Woman.
And Wonder Woman, which, again, second banana.
He's the second banana, but, he's still a leading man.
I agree.
Like, if the roles were reversed, I would say she was a leading lady.
Right. Right. But I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying leading man, but still second banana. That's why they're that's why they're amorphous banana and they're non-gendered.
Right.
There's not a gender binary to bananas, you see.
I hate you so much sometimes.
Sometimes I feel like I'm your Jordan Schlansky.
I think more or less I am your Jason Goss. Like, my co-host Jason on DC On Screen, I feel like this is the way he feels about me.
I can see that. Like, we're a spectrum where he's sort of the uptighter one and you are trying to be a little wilder, and then we get on this show and you feel like the uptight one suddenly. You've been thinking you were getting all this freedom, but you realized you're caged by your own self-doubt. Set yourself free. Join the dark side, Dave.
What you're talking about now?
I'm just kidding. I need you to keep us on task. What's the next story?
So no freedom. Gotcha.
No, over here you're a slave to yourself.
Oh, okay. So anyway, Megan Fox, man, she addressed those Star Trek casting rumors. She told Entertainment Tonight, "I love the rumor, but where did these things come from?" She said, "I literally have no idea what you're talking about." Well, sweetie, you posted an Instagram story of yourself on a talk show set with John Cho that featured a model of a Starfleet vessel and had the TNG logo on it. That's where these things come from.
You tell her, Dave.
She says, "No one from Star Trek has reached out. I've had no contact with that cam whatsoever." And stop teasing us with shit like that.
I mean, maybe she didn't even know. She probably didn't even know what the ship was from.
I mean, she's the one that put the TNG logo on it.
Oh, that was probably some social media strategist. Who has got her talked about on our podcast. So
That's
good
true.
on them.
Unfortunately, it blew up in their faces because we were like, she's not a good actress. Please don't be in Michael Bay Star Trek.
Well, honestly, and you float the stuff. Like, that's another thing about today with the social media. People put things out there and they float them like, hey, without having to confirm or deny that we're even talking to each other. We can get all the information we need by posting this picture. Mm-hmm. And then we find out what percentage of tweets in response to this were positive and how many were negative. Okay, well, we see where the fans stand.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's what they were kind of doing with Henry Cavill over in DC. And I don't know. Like, the fans flipped out, but we haven't heard anything, so.
What happened with Henry Cavill? Pardon my ignorance. I am but a poor Marvel kid.
Someone, we don't know who, leaked a news story saying that Henry Cavill had walked away from negotiations with Warner Brothers over being Superman again. And the fandom flipped out, and we don't know what we don't know actually how that turned out, because some people are still saying, you know, certain people in the fandom who release stuff, certain bloggers are saying like, oh yeah, our sources say that Henry Cavill's gone, they're moving on from Superman, they're not doing Superman anymore, that his agent leaked all that to try to like gain some steam in the negotiation table, and that just blew up in their face, and Warner Brothers was like, well, okay, we don't need Henry Cavill, whatever. But they haven't officially said that he's out. No one has officially said that he or Ben Affleck is out.
Right.
And
there's just
what
much speculation about that franchise just being done.
Yeah. And what further complicates that article is that they tried to use the Henry Cavill thing, and they tried to bring that in like, well, once Cavill found out that Ben Affleck wasn't returning, that has never been officially said. So, like, no one is saying that, and we've gotten production information that's official that says that Ben Affleck is at least still a producer on the Matt Reeves solo Batman films. We don't know if he's starring. It might be like hey, this is a younger Batman story. But anyway, there's just a lot of like, will they, won't they, and but it's pretty clear that whoever leaked that the information that there was negotiation problems was trying to get the fans riled to get more money or whatever. Like, someone leaked it for some reason or another to try to gauge reaction, basically. Right. Sorry.
It's all very possible.
It's so hard for me to like talk like I don't have an actual opinion and just be like, no, wait, no, I may think that it blew up in their face, and they're still talking about it, but I don't know actually who leaked it. Right.
It could have been they want to get rid of him. They were seeing what the fans would think about getting rid of him.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
So, last bit of news we have here. It looks like the Bad Robot deal with Paramount is going to end in 2020. So that could really stifle Star Trek 4. We don't know. We absolutely don't know if they would want to reboot or if they would want to just continue on. Like, Paramount owns the rights to those movies. Like, Bad Robot doesn't have to be involved by any stretch. But the Hollywood trades do say that Abrams is looking for a mega quote unquote mega deal, which would encompass films, television series, digital content, music, games, consumer products, and theme park opportunities with Warner Brothers, Universal, and Disney. So obviously not Paramount, and I think that's because Abrams, we might call him the destroyer of worlds on this podcast, but in actuality, I do think he is a pretty bright dude, and I think he recognizes Paramount as the sinking ship that it is, but that doesn't mean that he couldn't actually just have a deal with all those people and then still have a backdoor deal where he can go in and do something for Paramount, just like he's popped over to Disney and done with Star Wars, while still having the deal with Paramount. But yeah, so that it looks like their contract is at least going to be up in March of 2020.
So we might get one more out of that team before that relationship ends. And we'll see where it goes.
And it's disappointing because that Star Trek 4 thing with Hemsworth sounded really cool. And the Quentin Tarantino pitch. I really want to see that Quentin Tarantino Star Trek.
Well, that doesn't have to be with Bad Robot by any means, right?
No, neither one do.
Right.
Neither one do at all. But the problem with, Quentin Tarantino did talk to J.J. Abrams. They have had meetings. And the Star Trek 4 idea with Hemsworth was a J.J. Abrams thing. Like, that was... I don't know if they would still use that or if they would, rebuild it from the ground up or what. Like, though they could absolutely still do some iteration of it, but I don't feel like it would be the same thing.
I love time travel stories. I love good Captain Kirk stories. I love father-son stories. All that is fun. But I feel a little bit like the Chris Hemsworth coming back as George Kirk feels a little bit like, hey, this isn't necessarily where these characters should go, or like the lessons they need to learn, or whatever. But you know what we had in our first Kelvin timeline movie? We had Thor in that movie. What if we brought back Thor? And I think that's an okay impulse from a business standpoint, but I wouldn't let it ruin the franchise just because you can't make the deals, Yeah. And maybe they've gotten too far down that path now, but to turn around and try something else. But I don't think that's by any means the only idea for a fourth Star Trek movie.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to ruin anything. They're just going to do whatever they're going to do. Those ideas might not come to fruition because, Quentin Tarantino might be like, I was talking to Abrams, screw this. But he might not. And Tarantino has wanted to do a Star Trek movie for a long time. And we don't know if it was even time travel with the Hemsworth thing. It might be an alternate reality thing. Like, in the prime timeline, George Kirk lived to see his son take command of the Enterprise.
Right.
So who knows?
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see. Cool, man. Well, you feel satisfied with this here news episode?
So I had originally planned to do listener feedback on this episode, but there was just so much news, so I would like to devote an entire episode to it, probably next week, because it takes a while for us to get up new news. So any of you guys have any comments and anything, we'll include them. Just hit us up on Twitter, hit us up in our email, StarTrekUcast@gmail.com. We're on Facebook, we're everywhere. So, just bring your commentary. We should discuss it.
Yeah, do that. Do those things. All right, guys.
We shall lick your third rib.
Sorry.
Savor the salt on our tongues.
I was thinking about The Good Place.
The third rib, that is a good place to get licked.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys. Peace.
Live long and prosper.
To reach out to us, hit us up at StarTrekUcast.com, at Star Trek Ucast on Twitter, Star Trek Universe Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Just search for us there, or send us a message at StarTrekUcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to hear more from David C. Robertson, check out the DC On Screen podcast or maladjusted.tv. And if you want to hear more from Matthew Carroll, that's me, check out the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast, or go listen to my music at MatthewCarrollmusic.com or anywhere you get music.